Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino, and as you know, each week here on Hey Coach Tony, we tackle the hottest topics in and around youth and scholastic sports. And as always, we open up the studio lines because, hey, we want to know what you guys think. So the studio lines are open. The number here to catch me is 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Well, you know what? This week, something kind of cool. I have a very special guest in studio with me, but you know what? I'm not going to tell you why he's special until a little bit later on in the show. His name is Billie Anderson, and all I'm going to tell you at this point is that he was, at one point, a basketball coach at Danbury High School, not very far at all from the studio here. I'll also tell you that he has had a significant impact on the sports program at Danbury High School, and that's why I'll give you a little jump start. He is our Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week, our very first ever Fan of the Week. That's all I'm going to tell you for now. So I'm very excited to have him here with me. I'm not going to waste any more time. Billy, good morning. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Good morning. How you doing, Tony?
I'm so excited to have you here. And again, you're all going to understand why I'm excited a little bit later on in the show, because I'll tell you exactly why Billy's here. And you're going to want to stick around for that because it's a very cool story. And, you know, I always catch heat. You know, most of the stories I do are about how parents and coaches are always screwing up. This is actually a feel-good story, and it's something you want to you want to stick around for. I'm usually shining the light on all the idiots of the world, so this is going to be kind of fun. Anyway, moving on. This week, folks, I came across an article from a friend of mine just outside of Philadelphia, a good friend of the show, and this article reminded me of one of the more unique dynamics of the parent-coach-player triangle. Namely, I'm talking about the Booster Club. Booster clubs have been around basically for as long as there have been scholastic sports. Because let's face it, sports cost money. And never has that been any clearer than, you know, the past 5 to 10 years. You know, many schools, you read about them all the time. A lot of them are dropping their modified, their junior high, their freshman, even varsity sports. There are schools who have scrapped their entire sports program because, given the state of the economy, the funds just aren't there to sustain the fiscal responsibility and the costs of administering a sports program. So in essence, the Booster Club in recent years has become a vital component in the success of any legitimate scholastic sports program. Well, here's the problem. The role of the Booster Club is, well, I'll say it's evolving, but the fact is it's changing, and it's changing dramatically, and I think there is some clear evidence that it's changing a lot faster than most schools, coaches, parents can keep up with. And I'll explain to you in a minute. Now, some of you guys are having some deja vu. You may remember back in January, back in January was before I came to Brookfield, Connecticut, so I'll apologize for those of you. But for my YouTube fans who check me out on YouTube every week, you might remember that back in January, I did a show about a guy by the name of Robert Burton. Billy, you and I chatted quickly. You remember this story, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, you Connecticut knuckleheads should remember because Robert Burton became somewhat of a local celebrity. So even though I didn't do the show in Connecticut, you guys should remember who he is. This guy Burton is by all standards that I could read, a very successful businessman and a longtime booster for the University of Connecticut. Well, this past year, the UConn AD, a guy named Jeff Hathaway, was put in a position where he had to replace then football coach Randy Edsall. Well, typical search ensued, and after this typical search process, Hathaway hired former Syracuse coach Paul Pasqualoni. Now a lot of the Connecticut people are going, oh yeah, I remember now. So far this all sounds like a fairly run-of-the-mill, ho-hum, not a big story. Why are you talking about this Coach Tony, right? Very typical, not much there. Well, how often does that happen on this show? Happens never. So for those of you who are living in a cave or have really short memories, I'll explain to you what happened next. This guy Burton again, big-time booster to UConn, specifically for football. He took particular offense, not so much with who was hired, but with the fact that he, a booster, was not consulted and kept in the loop about who was being hired. Now, here's where people start getting rubbed the wrong way, but after the fact, Burton wrote a very well-publicized and scathing letter to the athletics director, basically insulting him and saying that, how else do you say this, Billy? He wanted his money back. He had written like $3 million in checks to the school, had his name put on the side of a building. They don't ask his permission to hire the football coach, so he gives him a boo-hoo, I want my money back, and by the way, I want you to take my name off the training facility. Well, like I said, donating $3 million, but now that he was shut out of this hiring process, he wants to take his ball and he wants to go home. Needless to say, the story, well, it stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Like I said, if you want to go back and search, I think it was somewhere around early to mid-January. If you go up on my YouTube page, they should still be up there. It was a very divisive issue in the youth sports environment. And I got to tell you, I was fairly surprised to hear that there were really, I wouldn't say just as many, but there were a fair amount of people who were supporting this guy Burton as there were those who were ready to hang him for his arrogance. Now, Billy, you remember the story, right? Yeah. I mean, this guy basically gives me boo-hoo, I want to go home, and I want to take my ball, my $3 million bucks, and the letters of my name off the training facility. When this first came out, you're a sports guy. What were you thinking about this?
I think that it was shameful on him because, first of all, if you go into a booster club, you should go into it with your whole heart in it, and not let something as senseless as that derailed what your whole intention was in the beginning.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think he had a legitimate beef?
I think I don't think that. I think it was a little bit over-exaggerated towards his feeling, how he felt about the whole thing. I think he should have approached it in a different way.
Oh, you mean you're a horrible AD and you're doing a lousy job and I could have done a bit. That wasn't good enough, I guess. But at the same time, the guy did write $3 million worth of checks. There are people out there who say, you know what? You write a big check like that, you better keep that guy included. I mean, where do you draw that line? I mean, before we get too far into this, let me explain to you why I bring it up, because it's not like I slept in and didn't prepare the show, guys. So I'm not looking back on January for this week's show. Like I said earlier, a friend of the show from Philly sent me this article, and it was about a high school where something similar has taken place. So I'm going to walk you through it real quickly. Last week, at a school called Unionville Chadds Ford, they hired a new varsity baseball coach, but some parents, believe it or not, have a problem with the selection process. Now, this is not Big East or SEC and all these other major college football programs. This is a varsity baseball program outside of Philadelphia. So this past Monday night, the school board, or I should say the committee, voted 6-1 to hire a guy named Mike McGee as the new coach for this upcoming spring. Not shortly after, several parents voiced their concern over this selection process, which they say happened without them being aware. And the words alone started to get me a little bit bummed out here. But whenever you have a group of idiots, there's got to be a head idiot. And the head idiot in this case is a guy by the name of Jeff Fries, who is president of the Booster Club. He said that nobody seems to have a problem with the coach personally. Sound familiar? Many parents and players are getting their information on the new coach secondhand, and they would have preferred to be on the selection panel. So far, what do you think about what this guy is saying? They want to be on the parents, players, they all wanted to be on the selection committee.
Well, they all want to be on the selection. Do they all want to coach the game too?
Now, be careful what you ask for, because I'll bet there are people who would answer that question with a resounding, you bet your butt, I want to coach. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, it's getting a little bit out of control. If you start to pay attention to the words that are being used, and Adam's in the other room, he'll chime in a little bit, I'm sure. But, they would have preferred to be on the selection panel. I'm going to dissect that one a little bit later because there are some inherent flaws in what this idiot spewed out of his mouth so far. By the way, if you have something to say about it, just give us a call here in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. In the course of the show, we're going to be talking about this evolving role of the Booster Club and whether it's going in the right direction, the wrong direction. Any athletic directors want to chime in with some subtleties on how to handle this, that's what we're talking about. But to go back to this guy Fries, who is the head of the Booster Club, he said that the members of the selection panel, which, by the way, includes 2 parents, a student, and I'll explain more about that later, apparently the selection committee was chosen at random. Now, so far, I think that sounds pretty good, right? No agenda, right? Now, of course, what's going to be, when you're talking to a Booster Club, what's going to be the next thing that comes out of some idiot's mouth when he doesn't like what's going on? I'll give you a guess. Yes, the almighty dollar. So the guy goes on with a quote. It says, the Booster Club pays 60% of everything that's going on. Why not their members, and I'm quoting this thing, why not their members, who are basically every parent, why not the members' opinion? Not just the 2. Everybody should have a say. It's got to work for that majority, and that's the part that was missed. You know what, Mr. Fries? I don't think that part was missed. I think that part was evaluated very closely by a group of administrators, including an AD who's probably hired safely 30 or 40 coaches, and maybe they just thought your idea wasn't the right one. And like I said, I'll be taking some calls on why that may or may not be a good idea. During the week, here's what got me, and here's a chance for you ADs to redeem yourselves. During the week, I actually proactively solicited opinions from ADs throughout the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut area, because that's kind of my initial sphere of influence. And I wanted to see what they thought about this. I was very surprised, at least at first, that I didn't get a whole lot of responses at all. I say I was surprised at first because once I stopped and actually thought for a second, it finally hit me. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. You're nodding your heads. You know what I'm going to say next. These booster clubs basically subsidize the athletic budgets for a lot of these schools. And so I realized that all you ADs, it's not that you don't check your email. It's not that you're rude. You're just a bunch of wusses. You just don't want to tick off the guys who are writing checks, right? You're afraid of losing your funding. Okay, I get it. I mean, I didn't even get anonymous emails from these guys, and I think it's because they know that I have their email addresses, and they were afraid I might spill the beans. Well, I tell you what, you guys can certainly redeem yourselves if you like. Go out, go to the street corner, find a payphone, disguise your voice, call in anonymously. But I'm telling you, the word is out to you ADs. I really want to get some insights from you all as to how this is working, how it should work, what the real problems are involved in this. But I'm telling you, I want the athletic director's perspective on this. So give us a call in the studio. It's 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. And maybe you can just help us regular schmoes understand the subtleties of that relationship between the school and the booster club. Now, before we get to your calls, we're going to have to go to a quick break here, but I do want to remind you before we go that we are moving more and more of the off-air stuff for Hey Coach Tony to the Facebook page. Believe it or not, if you want, guys, you can friend the page and you can post stuff up during the show so I can take some of your questions there instead of email. Just search for Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio when you're on Facebook. You can get a jump start on the topics for the week. You can suggest a topic for the show. You can nominate your athlete of the week, your coach of the week, or in today's case, our fan of the week. You can watch videos of the past shows, whatever you need when you're not listening live on the show. By the way, you can listen live on Facebook as well. But whatever you need when you're not directly at your radio, you can get it at Hey Coach Tony on ESPNradio.com. You want to tell me how much you hate the show? Go online, tell me how much you hate the show. Tell you what, we're going to get back, when we go back from break, we'll be talking more about the Booster Club and its evolving role in high school sports. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Stick around here.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio this lovely Saturday morning. Hey, before I forget, I want to extend my wishes for good luck, my son TJ and the rest of his freshman team. And I always bite my tongue not to say where I live because I want people showing up at my house. But his freshman football team is involved in a three-way scrimmage today. It's their first time on the field after a late start. So good luck, guys. And anybody has any updates from the scrimmage, pop them on the Facebook page, and I'll try to get to them on the air. This morning I'm joined in studio by Billie Anderson, who is the Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week. And Billie and I are chatting a little bit about, I guess, the state of the union on booster clubs, because while I think just like labor unions, and I don't want to get anybody all stirred up on a Saturday morning, but just like labor unions, I think they were started for all the right reasons. However, these booster clubs are taking on a life of their own. And if there's one thing that's prevalent in the world of youth sports, it is a sense of entitlement. There is a sense of entitlement that starts at the very top with the parents, and it certainly trickles down to the kids. And Billie, I know, has experienced that firsthand. In this case, what's happening is the sense of entitlement comes from parents who, you would think initially the best of intentions, start writing checks. And in more recent years, these checks are being used to subsidize the actual sports program so they don't have to be dropped, which is a good thing. But the flip side of that comes with a lot of baggage. You know, Billie, these parents are starting to say, hey, we want more and more of a role in how you, Mr. Athletic Director, are administering the general sports programs, and you, Mr. Coach, we want to tell you all the things that you're doing wrong, which, by the way, we don't want any accountability for that either, because Billie, as a former coach, first thing I asked him is, what do you think, and what does he say? Well, sure, I tell you what, Mom or Dad, Mr. Smith, why don't you step up and coach, and then you can tell us, you know, what's right and what's wrong. But I want to get back to this story in Philadelphia where this group of high school parents took particular offense to the hiring process of the new baseball coach. We're talking about this guy, Mr. Fries, who is really making a dope out of himself with the quotes that he's throwing out there. But this guy, head of the booster club, said while some of the parents, and here's where it gets interesting, Billie, some of the parents were, quote, advocating for one particular candidate, he himself didn't really care about who was hired. He just wanted the booster parents to have more information. You buying that?
No, I'm not buying that. No.
I'm not buying it either. If a couple of parents are favoring a specific candidate for the job, and this guy Fries, after what he just finished saying, now comes out and says, that really wasn't important to me. What's important to me is the process. Yeah, garbage. There was a guy, and we'll just call him Coach Robinson, and here's the quote coming from Fries. Coach Robinson is a known quantity. People know what they're getting with him. They've experienced him. Even people that haven't met him yet have seen him coach, and that's why there's a big push with him. So if you want to read between the lines, there is this Little League coach probably named Mr. Robinson who probably bought a bunch of the kids' ice cream, and, you know, when some kids didn't know what hand they were throwing with, he coached them. They all feel good about it. Well, guess what, Booster Club? That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a good high school coach. So, again, he says known quantity. People know what they're getting with him. That's why there's a big push. Not the case, he added, with this guy McGee, who they hired, who was, by the way, a former pitching coach for Downington East High School, which is not very far away. This guy just continues to feed me with wonderful quotes that make us see how stupid he is. Another quote, we're not saying don't add him, meaning don't include him in the process. We're saying provide us with the information about him so we agree you made the right decision. Now, again, you're a coach. You're hearing this stuff. What's going through your head, Billie?
It's still that I think the Booster Club is a little misinformed. I think they need to understand their role needs to be limited more than advanced.
What is the role? Let's put this where it belongs right now, Billie. Okay, what is the role of the Booster Club? As a former coach and an interested third party right now is what I'll call you until I tell people who you really are. What is the role of the Booster Club? If you were the AD or even just you're a coach and you got the Booster Club, what is their role?
You know, basically their role is there to support the athletics program, and that's where most Booster Clubs starts, with a good heart to go in to help the kids out, to meet those shortfalls which the budget cannot carry, and that's one of the main function of the Booster Club.
Very well said. My personal opinion, if you're in the Booster Club, is Have your cupcake sale, do your car wash, provide as much funding as you can so that you're going to create a cool environment for your kid in which to play. The second you step over the line, and, you know, Billy's going to have to go see a chiropractor when the show's over, because most of the stuff I'm saying, he's just shaking his head back and forth because he's experienced some of this, I'm sure. You know, your job is not to keep the AD in line. It's not to keep the coach in line. It's not even to have an opinion. You know what? I don't even think you're entitled to an opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. Let me take that back. I don't think you're entitled to voice your opinion, much less openly complain about a process of a coach that was just hired. You know, groups like this, and they're not alone. I don't want to pick on Philly. You know, you're not alone. You're not the only group of idiot parents that are trying to ruin kids' sports. But this guy Fries goes on. He says, again, we have no background, no information on this guy whatsoever. It's a known quantity versus an unknown quantity. Really, known quantity. Known by whom? Right? I mean, and by the way, the guy they hired, maybe one or two of the board members do know him. Maybe they don't. The real issue here is still, why does a booster club feel that just because they write a check, they get to, in essence, hire the new coach? Well, listen, 855-439-2622 is a number here. That's 855-HEY-COACH. Now, Fries says that even if this guy McGee turns out to be the best coach ever, again, this guy just makes himself look so stupid. Even if this turns out to be the best baseball coach they've ever had, there's still the feeling that the booster club parents had no say in this selection. Guess what? You didn't have any, well, that's not true, but let's even say you had zero say in his selection. That's not a bad thing. Matter of fact, probably a good thing. Because if you're a parent and you're on the booster club, you have a very significant and strong vested interest in, what do you think's on the, I'm Mr. Fiorino. I am president of the booster club at Danbury High School, and my son, by the way, is the backup shortstop at Danbury High School. I want to say in this, why is that a lousy idea? You're laughing because it's obvious, but it's obviously not obvious to some of these idiots who are doing this. Why is that just so blaringly and obviously stupid idea to give me any power whatsoever in the selection of the next coach?
Probably because the son would no longer be a backup.
If I'm paying money, you don't think I'm going to go rub elbows with Coach Billy and say, hey, Coach Billy, you know that the nice new van that you guys are driving to the games? Yeah, well, I did that. And did you notice how well my son's been hitting in batting practice? Yeah, okay, good. I mean, come on, use your brains. Use your brains, my God. Now, this is the part where I start to wonder what the downside might have been if the board had given some power to the booster club. Let's forget about just Mr. Fiorino who wants to see his son get more playing time or be a starter. And Adam, if you want to chime in, let me know. But Billy, let me ask you this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what types of things might have happened in this school if just, let's say, the baseball booster club had a major part in this hiring process? Just the baseball booster club was intimately involved with the hiring process and the approval process of this coach. What other domino effects you think might happen in the school moving forward?
I think that if you allow the booster clubs to get involved with the hiring process, things can get complicated. I mean, the AD has a big enough challenge job as it is now. A lot of some coaches maybe second guessing the AD. I just think that when you add to the booster club getting involved into the hiring process, it just creates a bigger mess.
And now let's turn this forward. So they just hired the baseball coach. Thank you, Booster Club. Great job. We had, by the way, that process will not go smoothly if the Booster Club's there, but let's just assume they're following the almighty dollar and they give it to them. Come April, May, they realize they got to replace a football coach for the upcoming fall. And the school now decides, gee, I'm not sure how well that process worked getting the Booster Club involved. What do you think the football Booster Club is going to say?
Well, it worked.
You see where I'm going with this, Billy?
Yes,
hey,
yes.
You let the baseball parents pick the baseball coach.
That's
now
right.
You're going to shut us out?
That's right.
This becomes a ridiculous snowball effect. And the fact of the matter is, pretty soon, what do you got? You got the inmates running the asylum. And I mean, in a literal sense, when it comes to us sports parents, we are not the brightest group. Actually, we're probably very bright. We have zero common sense. We are selfish creatures who are worried about our children first and second, and third. We don't really care about anything but our kids. And they disguise it under this booster club. Like I said, when it's time for the cupcake sale, everybody's happy. Something like this happens, the ugly really jumps out at these people, and some really nasty stuff starts to happen, and we show how stupid we can truly be. So, that's one of the things that really you empower the booster club beyond their normal means, and I think you're setting a pretty nasty precedent. Well, obviously, I'm curious what you guys have to say about this. So there's a couple of emails I want to get to, and we'll also be taking your calls. But before we, before we go to break, there's another quote here. This guy's just fodder from my ire. How's that for some vocabulary for you this morning? This guy Fries went on to say some of the other coach candidates didn't even make it through the first part of the process. Why? Give us some information. That's all we're asking. No, you're not. This guy's not going to be happy. They could have included him in the process, but unless they were signing the offer letter on behalf of the booster club, I don't think these guys are really going to be happy at all. And this is actually pretty short-sighted on the booster club's part, and I'll explain to you why. It's hard enough, and this committee was comprised of 6 people. It's hard enough to get 6 people to agree, even on a majority basis, and this was a 5-1 vote. It's hard enough to get them, a group of 6, to agree on this. Could you imagine? Think about a baseball team. How many players are there? Safely 13, 14? Throw 13 or 14 more parents into this equation. And according to this idiot, throw some of the players onto that panel. Now you got anywhere between 15 and 25 people, let's say, who are trying to agree on who's the best candidate. It's not like you got 1,000 highly qualified high school coaches marching around the greater Philadelphia area who are dying for this job. That search would have taken forever. And ultimately, whose butt's on the line, Billy, when you got to hire a coach? Whose butt's on the line?
It's the AD.
The AD, exactly. So now these idiots want to say, we want to come in and you're making soup, but I think we need some more of this. Think we need some more of that. Then when the soup comes out tasting like crap, you're going to blame the chef. Doesn't work that way. Well, listen. All right, I'm getting all fired up, man. This is good. Billy, you've been great so far. Please stick around because we will, I promise. Our mystery guest, Billie Anderson, we're going to reveal his identity sometime in the next half hour. But when we come back, we'll take your calls, we'll go to a couple of emails, and we're going to continue to discuss this whole notion of the booster club. So you are listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. And I'm joined in studio today by Billie Anderson, the Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week. And couldn't be happier. You're doing a great job, man. I really appreciate it. During the break, I promised I was going to start to get to some of your calls and emails, and so I think we're just going to jump right in. Apparently, we have John on line 1 who has something to say. Hey, John, you're on Hey Coach Tony. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Coach Tony. How are you?
I'm great, man. What's on your mind?
I'm just looking at this booster stuff. It's pretty funny stuff. First of all, they sure take their baseball serious wherever this place is. I give you that much. I'm reading the article, and my favorite part of the article is when he says, where is it? Here it is. Free says that having McGee's answers to questions regarding college contacts, that's the part I like. College contacts and its sports structure comes to them as hearsay is worrisome to some parents. The fact that we don't know is the scary part. How scary can it be? Are they hiring perverts, child molesters, people with criminal backgrounds, or are they worried that the coach they want, they just want somebody in there to get them into a college or get their son seen?
Well, I saw what you saw.
When you use the word scary in the hiring process, that they won't inform, it's scary. And you have to have something change the whole thing. You can still get the money from the boosters, but it's got to be something written down where, look, we're going to show you, give you some information about the coaches and who we're looking at and stuff like that. You will have no say whatsoever in who's hired, who's not hired. This is our job. Leave it to us to get the best candidate going forward. It's in our best interest to put the best candidate going forward. Why would we bring somebody in who's not qualified, who's not going to do a good job for us?
Yeah, I mean, these guys are motivated, the coaches and the athletic director. You think the parents are motivated by winning? This ain't Little League.
No, they're motivated by what it's going to do for their sons or for their kids. That's what they're motivated.
If I'm the coach at this high school, I'm motivated by winning ball games because you know what? At the varsity level, Billy, what happens if you don't win ball games and you're a coach?
You don't win ball games. You don't look good.
You don't look good, and then what does the AD eventually look for? If you're not winning ball games, he's going to replace you. Yeah. And if you're an AD and this kind of proliferates throughout the sports program, what do you think the superintendent of schools is going to do? They're going to get rid of your butt too, and they're going to find an AD who can win. I mean, the reality of the situation is, and John brought up a good point, that this article, the parents did talk about. They didn't have enough information about this coach's college contacts. Well, Mr. Fries, where are your college contacts? I mean, listen, we all know that kids at the varsity level, less than 1% of these kids are going to get scholarship money. That's just a fact. It's not my opinion. I wish it wasn't true, but it's true. So you're going to tell me that this little no-name school on the outskirts of Philadelphia, I mean, Northeast baseball players got enough of a challenge as it is trying to get recognition. You're going to tell me that, Cal State Fullerton, Stanford, Florida, Miami, these people are looking to the outskirts of Philadelphia for their star freshman shortstop? Come on. Listen, what it all boils down to, John, is they didn't get the guy they wanted, and now they're crying about all this. I'm surprised they didn't say somewhere in that article, even though they're talking about it, I'm surprised they're not saying something like, we're not going to start we're going to discontinue our fueling of the program. And you know why that happened? It'll
come down to that eventually. If they eventually pick somebody that they really don't like, they'll say, well, like anything else, we're going to pull our money, we're going to do something, we're going to start our own team or do something like that. Like I said, the problem is you have to have something in writing, guidelines for these booster clubs to say, hey, look, thank you for your money, thank you for all you do, we really appreciate it, it makes us a big program. But you will have no say whatsoever in who we pick as the next coach. There's people qualified for that, and a mom and dad watching their kids play Little League baseball up to high school doesn't really qualify as someone who's able to pick the next coach or the next college contact that can help their son,
Well, here's why John, and by the way, thanks for the call. Here's why I'm going to disagree with what John said. And Billy, you tell me, because you got more knowledge on this than I do. I don't think they're going to pull their support.
No.
Why? Now tell me what I'm thinking. Why will they not pull their support for the program?
They wouldn't pull their support because, number one, they went into it. They had the right idea when they went into this with open eyes. Their heart is into it. I think somewhere along the line they're getting confused because also their kids are playing the sport. So.
Well, and here's the other thing. What's the difference between a high school booster club and a college booster club, primarily?
Now, a high school college booster club is big, is huge. The high school booster club is solely there to support because of the budget crunch here with the high school, and some of the kids are playing high school ball and stuff.
And plus, the booster club of a college, especially, it's comprised primarily of, I would say, some current parents of players, okay. But also, alumni.
Yes.
Alumni who have some money and take some pride in that program. Now, I don't know about you, but I've actually spoken to booster clubs, or at least I used to, because after this show they're never going to invite me back again. But what I noticed about high school booster clubs is it's primarily comprised of the parents of the current players. Not a whole lot of alumni going back to give money to the booster club after the high school. You do the 50-50 at the football game and all that stuff. Yeah, people raise money, but that's not the booster club. The booster club is comprised of parents whose kids are currently playing, and they don't really have much of an option. I got to tell you, you either change schools or you pony up a couple of bucks and make sure your kid has somewhere to play. That's really what's happening now, and I think that some of that is kind of the root cause of some of this frustration. Here I am now dipping into my pocket for my kid, and here's where I almost sympathize with the booster club. If I really thought it wasn't the best coach, part of me is going to say, you know what, I have to subsidize this program, and now I'm completely cut out of this equation, and I don't even get this, I don't have any say at all. In other words, without my money, maybe you don't have a program, and I don't even get a say in who you guys are going to hire. I don't completely disagree with the mentality. I should say I don't disagree with the thought process. I disagree with the mentality because the mentality becomes one of entitlement, and that's one of the problems there. You know what? I want to get to an email that we got here. Stephen in Reading, Connecticut writes in and says, hey, Coach Tony, the article hints about a candidate that was favored by some parents of the booster club. If the booster club were directly involved in this process, it would go something like this. And this is kind of cool. A subtlety that Stephen from Reading gets. Here's how the interview process goes. Okay, Booster Club, here's candidate A. No, we think Coach Robinson is better. How about candidate B? He's pretty good. Coach Robinson, I think, is a little better. How about candidate C? No, Robinson seems to have a little more experience in these areas. These people who drag things out, I'm reading the email. These people will drag things out until they got the guy they wanted. They aren't upset because they weren't given information. They're upset because they didn't get the coach they wanted. The athletic director and the school board hired a coach without the parents' approval. How dare they? Well, thanks, Stephen, because that's a pretty common theme and response I was getting from people. Wait a second, the AD was doing his job, his butt's on the line, and he makes the final decision? How dare he? Well, thanks, Stephen. I think you did make a great point. Because this really does sound like an entitled group of crybaby parents who are really making idiots out of themselves. Does the AD answer to the parents? Yes. And hear me out here, Billy, because he or she is responsible for creating a beneficial environment for the kids in which they can play. On that front, they absolutely, ADs, if you're listening, you absolutely report to the parents on that front. Now, here's the difference. Does the AD answer to the boosters because they write checks?
No.
There you go, Billy. They do not. They're grateful for the checks, and some of them, by the way, have no backbone, and they will kowtow to the booster club. You want to write a check, and I'm AD Fiorino from Danbury High School. I'm going to say thank you for helping us gather the resources we need to do our jobs as best we can. But your checkbook doesn't make you qualified or entitled to be involved in any way, shape, or form in my job. Thank you for helping me do my job well, but I was hired here because of my skill sets, and when the day is done, I'm the one whose butt is on the line here. That's it. You know what? There's another email, but I'm going to get to this one later. Billy, time's flying here, and I promise I would tell everybody who you are. So Billy's going to blush a little bit, but it is time for the Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week. Fan of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Pippa's Sports Cafe. Billy's nodding his head. He knows this place. It's located at 114 South Street in Danbury, Connecticut. Pippa's, if you haven't been there, is the top sports bar and cafe in Danbury with specials every single night of the week. Monday nights, now the football season's here, you can have 25-cent wings and pints of beer for just $2.50. And you can drink and eat while you watch the game on any of their 27 large HD flat screens. And on weekends, this place just becomes a football fan's paradise. Every Saturday, you can watch any college football game that is on anywhere. And on Sundays, every NFL game is on the screen at Pippa's, while the kitchen serves up some terrific food specials all weekend long. Pippa's Sports Cafe, again, it's located at 114 South Street in Danbury. Call them today at 203-790-9455. Without any further ado, our Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week is none other than our own good friend here, Billie Anderson. I told you there was something special about this guy, so I'm going to explain to you why I invited him to join me today and why we're going to talk about this in our last segment. People in and around Danbury may be familiar with this story. When the Board of Education announced that freshman sports would be cut from Danbury High School this year, parents and students showed up in power at the Public Board of Education meeting to protest. Many of them were there because of the efforts of our own Billie Anderson. Now that sounds impressive enough, but Billy is not the athletics director at Danbury High School. This guy does not have a child in the school. He doesn't coach there and is in no way at all, unless you can correct me, Billy, you are in no way at all compensated from the athletic department, correct?
Right. That's
okay. Right. Okay. This guy decided to step up and get involved because he understands the importance of sports in the developing life of a young kid. We're going to go through the story when we come back from our break, but to cut to the chase, Danbury High School freshman sports was saved this year, and Billie Anderson is a major part of why that happened. Billy, you take a bow. You're the very first Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week, and guess what? You get the highly, highly coveted Hey Coach Tony coffee mug. All right? Remember, if you want to nominate somebody as our Fan of the Week, Player of the Week, or Coach of the Week, you can do it by doing it up on the Facebook page. You can email me at heycoachtony@gmail.com. Just like I said, go to the Facebook page and let me know. I want to remind you again that the Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week has been brought to you by the good folks at Pippa's Sports Cafe, located at 114 South Street in Danbury. Come enjoy the terrific food specials all weekend while you watch college football on Saturday and NFL games on Sunday. And don't forget the amazing Monday night special, 25-cent wings and 250 pints of beer. Call Pippa's today at 203-790-9455. Pippa's Sports Cafe, where everyone's treated like an all-star. When we get back, I'm actually going to give you the climax of this story and tell you who Billie Anderson really is. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Stick around.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio, and I'm starting to spill the beans on who Billie Anderson is. As I said before the break, Billie, aside from being nominated Hey Coach Tony Fan of the Week, Billie, I won't say single-handedly, but played a major part in saving freshman sports at Danbury High School. And as I kind of tickled your curiosity before the break, he is not the athletics director at Danbury High School. He is not a coach at Danbury High School. He is not even a parent at Danbury High School. Billie Anderson is head custodian at Danbury High School. And amidst all the nonsense, all the garbage, all the boo-hoo, woe is me nonsense that's going on, instead of crying about something bad happening, Billie took a stance and took a mindset that why don't we just spend more of our energy figuring out how to fix this. So Billie literally rallied the parents, rallied the faculty, rallied the kids, and thanks to Billie and his efforts and the parents that kind of rode along with him, there is freshman sports at Danbury High School. So, Billie, like I said, man, take a bow, because when I first heard this story, and I just heard about it yesterday, I scrambled to find you, and I'm so glad you were able to join me. But, you know, tell us a little bit about this story. I mean, when did you first hear that they were going to scrap freshman sports at Danbury?
Well, Tony, I first heard about it just before graduation. And I said to myself, something has to be done. So what I did was I went to a board meeting, and I addressed the board, and I expressed my concern about the cutting of the freshman sports. And from that point on, what I did was, after that meeting, I got with a good friend of mine, Denise Bro, Coach Bro, I call her.
Coach Bro, okay.
Which is a field hockey coach, a good friend of mine. And so we came up with a plan to send out flyers to get parents involved. As you know, at Danbury High School, the middle school graduate at Danbury High School. That's Rogers Park and also Broadview. Mm-hmm. So what we did, we handed out flyers.
So you went to the graduation and actually handed out flyers?
Yes, we did. And so to all the parents. And so we scheduled a meeting for on June 28th. And we did have the meeting at DYS, which I am on the board of director at DYS. That's Danbury Youth Services. Mm-hmm. And what happened was that several parents, 20 or so parents showed up. And we all pretty much sat down and talked about this issue, and we pretty much got together and figured out what we had to do to raise this money.
Well, listen, dude, I think, like I said, that's terrific. How do I, you know what, forgive me for anything I say that comes out the wrong way. Why on earth, why the hell does the custodian care so much about freshman sports?
I care because I've been at Danbury High School for 13 years, and I've been involved in student activity all those years I've been there, and I just have a compassion for kids. I grew up playing sports. That was my escape from a lot of things.
Escape from what? Let's call it what it is.
Pretty much escape from the streets, escape from getting in trouble, keep busy, I just thought it was just injustice not to have sports at Danbury High School, which has been a big tradition of Danbury High School. Mm-hmm. And also knowing that the middle schools have no sports as you're just gonna go from the middle school where there's no sports to a high school where you had sports and all of a sudden it's gone.
Well, plus that's a very impressionable age. Like, this story hit me in the heart because, like I said, my son's a freshman, and I got two kids. I got a 7th grade daughter and a 5th grade daughter. Sports is a big part of our lives, and you know what? I don't mind saying it. Where I live, again, I sound like a jerk. We're not worried about our kids in the streets as much as a lot of other areas. But you know what? drugs don't care what neighborhood you're from. Grades slipping, they don't care what neighborhood you're from. And I don't know if you've experienced this as much as I have, but, for a city like Danbury, yeah, maybe sports is an escape from the streets. But, in other neighborhoods, sports is an escape from your kid getting left behind a grade. It's an escape from your kid potentially getting a flavor for some nice expensive drugs that I don't mind saying it. They proliferate some of the upper class neighborhoods. I always joke and say, Bob Geldof, if you remember way back when I was in high school, said rock and roll can save the world. Well, so can baseball, so can football, so can the chess club. I think the point is you saw an opportunity where there was something significant and important being taken from these young kids who are at a very impressionable age. And I'm just so totally impressed that if I told somebody, make a list of all the people that you think would step up and save the sports program. You might start with wealthy parent. You might say, the coaches are going to rally around and try to save their jobs. You might say the athletic director doesn't want to see the program go away. You might say the teachers find that it's an enriching part of the development of a young student. I'm telling you, I don't know who would be further from top of the list than the head custodian. And I got to tell you, I don't walk around Danbury High School, but I would imagine you're one of those guys that high-fives the kids walking down the hall. I'll bet you rally the kids, and I bet you got a ton of respect walking through that place. And I'm going to embarrass you a little bit more because I do know the answer to that. And there are some quotes here from people in the community. One of them happens to be a psych teacher and director of the school plays at the high school, who what's her name? Cindy. I can't.
Cindy Eugene.
Okay, yeah. Well, Cindy said he rallied the whole community. Let me see. Another person who got involved in this story and gave us a quote was one of the parents of an incoming freshman, Lorraine Amaral, who said, "Billy's a phenomenal person. His whole life is based on what's right and what's good for the children. Everybody who has anything to do with DHS, Danbury High School, has the utmost respect for Billy, from the students to the staff to the coaches." And you actually had a pretty nice quote in the article that I read. And I'm going to use your quote because you may not remember it, but I have it in front of me, so I'm going to take it. You said, and I quote, "I think you have to take a stand and you have to get involved. When I look at things like this, I go back to the beginning of this country." This is a great quote. You look at all the sacrifices. Sacrifice, and this is where it gets way past sports, guys, and this is why I love it. Billy said that sacrifice does not consist of race. All kinds of people have sacrificed in the past for what we all have this very day. That was one of my favorite quotes in the article. What struck you to say something? And again, I'm an idiot, so I don't look at this and say race. But you know what? In Danbury High School, there are probably some of those issues. So what sparked you to kind of bring it there?
Well, I mention that because, I think about all the civil rights movement. I think about all the wars that we have in this country, in this world. And I think on the people who have sacrificed for what everyone in this world has today. And I, for one, would never forget that, because if those people, men and women, has not sacrificed with their lives and their hard work, none of us would be here today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, going back to Cindy and what she had said about you. She said that you've been way more than a custodian at the high school, and you've worn a bunch of different hats. I know you coached basketball for a year or two that you were there, and I'm sure having played and then having coached, you saw a couple of kids that, if they hadn't had sports, maybe would have gone a very different direction. I mean, I don't want to speak for you. The population of that school better than I do. You're going to tell me, I mean, are there kids who may have really wound up somewhere very different in life if they didn't have a chance to play sports?
There are a lot of kids. There's hundreds of kids that, from what my take of watching, being involved with sports and the kids, is that sports is a big savior of kids going the right way in academics and so forth, because it helps the kids stay focused, because you're representing the school. And when you represent the school, you have to carry yourself, hold your head up high, and do the right thing, and not just for the school, but you're doing the right thing for yourself.
Well, you know what? If you're any inclination of how Danbury High School is being represented, I got to tell you, I'm personally very proud on behalf of that school to have folks like you involved in the development of these kids. And again, I hope it doesn't sound bad. I would never guess that the head custodian is going to have some impact in the development of my kid, but you're having impact there. And with all these quotes that came in, and I can't get to them all, I really can't. But I will share with you a nice culmination in this whole story was. I was told that during the season's, the freshman football, during the season's very first practice, on the day it was announced freshman sports were going to continue, they walked you out onto the field. You were introduced to this year's group of incoming freshmen, and the students all thanked you, and one by one, and just like at the end of a movie, one or two kids started to clap, and before you knew it, everybody was kind of giving you the props, and certainly well-deserved props. So if the folks in Danbury who are listening, the staff, the administration, the AD, you all owe this guy a tremendous debt of gratitude, and I am personally very proud to have had you on the show, Billy. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up on another week of Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. This was kind of fun. I didn't get to blow my top today, but that's okay, too. Be sure to tune in every Saturday at 9 a.m. for Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Go, TJ.